Welcome to our video on contract amendments. In this video, we will go over setting up the amendment process and creating and approving amendments in WebGrants. It is critical that if you've watched our previous videos on managing grants and negotiations before you actually do this video. A contract amendment is a grant subcomponent. It's used to initiate and approve a contract amendment process. An amendment can be started by either internal staff or by the grantee. Amendments can have a type, meaning that multiple different types of amendments can be used in the system. Each amendment type can have different forms even. Examples of the types might be extension request or budget modification, or even a scope of work change. Clients can define a multi-level approval process of up to 5 approval levels. When an amendment is submitted, staff will then route the document through the approval levels and approve the amendment. It is possible to copy grant forms from the grant to the contract amendment. For example, the budget can be copied into the amendment where the grantee can modify the budget to show how they would like to change the values. The approved amendment will not automatically copy over the copied document. Staff will have to edit the budget manually if it's a budget change, or manually update the scope or project or change on another form. The amendment has all the standard document functionality, including like the negotiation, withdrawal, notes, feedback, and versions. But it is 2 separate functions we are talking about here. The contract amendment in our system is for the request and approval of that amendment. The actual negotiation or changing of the version is done after it's approved. So one of the very first things that we have to do to get the amendments ready for the sub-grantee is to go back into the funding opportunity. So we're going to log in with our admin login, our internal login. And what we have to do is go to the funding opportunity first. Number 1, we have to set the forms we want to use. 2, we have to have the form set up with the correct type. And 3, we have to set the approval levels for the internal users. So for this example, we're going to actually go to the associated forms bar. So that's the forms tab up above. You're going to click on your grant tab first. We have to ensure that we include that contract amendment document in the grant. And we want to make sure that it isn't checked grantor edit only or grantor only. Once we do that, we can save. Now we have to go to the actual amendment tab. This tab works like all of the others. You will click add to add a form. You will click edit to uninclude any form you do not want to use for this funding opportunity. This is where you will also set your forms for grantor only or grantor edit only, or leave unchecked for both sides to have access to the form. You also have the ability to select an amendment type. For example, if you have a budget change request form, you can choose to actually sign in for that type only. And that form will only show up if you're doing a budget revision. We can also order the forms that we want the grantee to complete the forms in. When you're done making your changes, click Save at the top. The third thing is setting the approval levels. So we want to go to the funding opportunity general information. We click Edit, and we're going to scroll down to the approval levels, approval rules section. In the approval rules section, you will set your contract amendment levels to whatever levels you decide. You can have up to 5 levels of approval. So for this example, we're going to set it to 2. You'll go to the top and just save that. Once you have all of your forms set up and the way you want, what we want to do next is we actually want to go in, and we have a couple of options here for people. So we're going to go to the people. We're going to set up approval levels. Again, this is an internal process only. External users do not have a role to approve any approval levels in the system. So we're going to click on the first internal person and click on the roles tab. And we will click edit, and we will assign them the contract amendment approval level 1. Now, if you do not see this and you do not have access to roles, you will contact your actual administrator and they will actually create this role for you. We've already created them, so we would just go up to the top and click save. Now we need to go set up our second level of approval. So we'll find that internal person, click on their name, click on roles again, click edit, and assign them approval level 2. Once you have the user set up, then you are ready to actually go through 2 types of options that you'll have to make a decision on. And one is you can allow the grantee to log in and create the amendment request themselves and then submit it. Or you can also create an amendment manually in editing status on the internal site for the grantee to complete, or even or even create an amendment in submitted status if the internal user wants to complete the form itself. For this video, we will go through option 1, which is allowing the grantee to create their own amendments. And then we'll briefly explain option 2 because they are very similar. So for your option, we must show you what the amendment component looks like in the grant first. So we're going to go into grant tracking, and we're going to find our grant. We'll click on that grant, and then in the grant component listing, look for your contract amendments. So if you click on that contract amendment, this is the actual amendment document. To actually create one, you will click Add Amendment. So when you click Add to create an amendment internally or externally, this is your contract amendment general information. So if we want to set this up for the external user to come in, we must keep the status in editing. We will choose the amendment type if you have more than one type, and you can even add the title for budget revision for, you know, the month, the year, whatever, request number 1, request number 7, whatever you'd like. The title will show basically as a memo. You will click save, and if you're creating this for the external person, it is done. They can now log in and they can actually submit it in. So we're going to log out and see what that looks like. So we're going to log in as the external user. When they come in, they will click on grants, and they will click on their current grant that they want to submit the request in for. Those also scroll down to contract amendments, and they will see the already created amendments. So they do not click add in this instance. They will actually click on that row, and then they will click edit. When they click edit, they will see any forms past the general information that they must complete. So these are usually user-defined forms. The general information is a system form. So whatever user-defined forms you've set up, they must complete the required fields. Now they can go in and out and they can save, but once they actually enter their information, save all the required fields, and mark it as complete, they will get the green button. So they must mark that as complete, and then the amendment turns green and it is ready for submission, and they could submit the amendment. Now, when they get this pop-up, they can confirm or back out, but they want to click submit to submit it into the system. Okay, now that they are done, they've submitted it in. We want to actually show you how they can create one on their own. So one of the other options is just allowing them to come in and create the contract amendment without you initiating it on the internal side. So they would just log in and click on Add Amendment. And of course, the status is blank because the system will automatically do that by them submitting it. So they will choose the amendment type. That can be whether it's a budget revision or it can actually be any other type you've chosen. And then they create their own title. They will click Save. Then they will go down to the next form and they will complete that form just as you saw before in this video. Again, they can go in and out. They must complete all red required fields and mark it as complete before they can submit. So it's turned green, they can submit their amendment. So now that is the external user creating the amendment request. So now once that happens, anyone on the internal side that is subscribing to the alert for their program area, they will log in. After they receive that alert, they will see it on their dashboard. And they have a couple options. We're going to actually show you how to search if you have multiple contract amendment requests. So you would click on grant tracking. On this page, instead of doing a grant search, we're going to click on the amendment search. So click on your amendment search, and then there's multiple ways. What we're looking for to actually do this search is we want to look for anything that's in submitted status, and we can also do it by program area, funding opportunity, and amendment type. So the amendment type could be, you know, again, the budget revision. It could be any other type that you've set up. And when you click search, that will pull all of those into this amendment listing. For this example, we're just going to click on the first one in submitted. And as you will see, the funding opportunity shows, again, the program area, the status is submitted, what amendment number, and the initial submit date. Now, this one was created on the internal side, so you don't have a submitted by. When you go down, you will also see the primary contact information, the organization information. There's your document approval. It's not ready yet. And then your user defined form. So we're going to scroll back up and show you what the options are. The options are, you know, negotiate. You can negotiate this back if there's anything wrong. And again, this is like any other negotiation in the system. You're going to select your forms to unlock, the due date that you want it back for them to submit back. That's what the alerts are working off of. So the automatic generated alerts are working off of that resubmit due date. And your alert will also include any message that you type in there. If necessary, you can also include an attachment. For this example, you would have just clicked save, and then it automatically would put it in correcting status and on the external user side, and they would receive an alert to go in and log in and change that contract amendment request. We're going to skip that. We're going to close this out. We're going to go and we can withdraw. We can copy. We can go through the approval process. We can actually click on internal notes, and these are notes that the external users do not see. You can also create feedback. Feedback is used to submit any feedback back to the external user, and it appears on the bottom of the contract amendment as well as they receive an alert. For this example, though, we want to go through the approval process. So we set up 2 users. So the first person that is level 1 has reviewed the information that was submitted on the contract amendment, and they would go in and click approve. If they click not approve, then that means they want to negotiate. So again, not approved would mean that you found something incorrect. You can add comments, and if you see a notify next box, you must select the person or one of the people in that box. It is critical. That's how they receive the alert to know that you have completed your level of alert approval, and they get their alert so they can start their process. If you do not see a notified next, that means that you are the only level. Once you've entered your comments, notified, click save. Takes you back to the preview, and as you can see, it is still in submitted status. It will not change the status until the last level of approval has approved the contract amendment request. So now you've notified the next level of approval. So level 1 logs out, level 2 will log in, and they will see it on their approval list in their dashboard, and they can go directly there, or they can also do the search as I showed you previously. For this example, we're just going to click on this one, and we're going to go through the approval process. Now, through the approval process with level 2, they can delete level 1 if they found something and they need to negotiate it back as well. Or if it's ready to approve, then they would say, I'm approving this. They can add their own comments. And as you can see, there is no notify next in that box. So they are the last level. So when they click save, you will see that the status has now changed to approved. So this is an approved contract amendment request. What will happen next is you can see all of the view. Anybody can come in and see that it is now in approved status. What I want you to all know that once the amendment is in the approved status, the system will notify the grantee with an email notification that the amendment was approved. And depending on what type of amendment was approved, you will either go into the grant components and negotiate, or you yourself can create a new version of the grant form from the internal side to amend and update that grant form. But this is the amendment approval. So if you wanted to negotiate, you would have to click on negotiate on that budget form and go through that process, or again, create new version. And that would complete your entire contract amendment process. Again, if you do not know how to negotiate or create a new version of the form, please watch our previous video on managing grants and negotiations. This concludes our video on creating and processing amendments in the WebGrants system. Thank you for watching.